The Zoraxian Dominion ships hung in Earth orbit like massive metal spiders. Their hulls were dark gray with red markings that glowed against the blackness of space. Inside the command vessel, Grand Marshal Zelthric stood with his forearms clasped behind his back. His scaled skin reflected the blue light of the tactical displays around him. Zelthric had conquered 17 star systems in his long career. His species had been the unchallenged military power in their sector of the galaxy for over 300 years. He looked at the small blue planet below with what passed for a smile among his kind. "This would be an easy conquest, report," Zelthric ordered. His voice was deep and raspy. Scout Captain Vexenar stepped forward. "The humans are primitive by our standards, Grand Marshal. They have basic space travel but have only reached their own moon. They have nuclear weapons but have only used them twice in their entire history. They fight among themselves constantly over resources, land, and belief systems. They are divided into nations with no unified government. They will be easy to conquer," Zelthric nodded. "A species that restrains itself in warfare will be easy to break. Send Ambassador Kraltek to deliver our terms. The formal announcement of their coming defeat is tradition." On Earth, the first sign of the alien arrival came at the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico. Diane Powell had been working the night shift when the readings went off the scale. At first, she thought it was a mistake, a glitch in the system. But the readings continued. Something massive was approaching Earth and it was slowing down. That meant it was under controlled power. That meant intelligence. Diane picked up the phone with shaking hands. "Sir, you need to come see this right away." Within 6 hours, every major government on Earth knew about the approaching vessels. Within 12 hours, the first clear images were captured by orbital telescopes. Within 24 hours, the United Nations had convened an emergency session in Washington, D.C. Admiral Frank Miller walked into the Pentagon's most secure meeting room. He was a tall man with short gray hair and a face weathered by years at sea. He had commanded ships during 3 different conflicts and had served as a diplomatic liaison in 2 peace negotiations. Now he faced something entirely new. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said to the room of military and government officials, "we are not alone in the universe, and our new neighbors don't look friendly." The Secretary of Defense nodded. "Admiral Miller will lead our military response planning. Dr. Eric Barnes from NASA will head scientific assessment. We need options, and we need them fast." In the week that followed, governments around the world prepared as best they could. Military forces went on high alert. Scientists worked around the clock trying to understand the alien technology they could observe from a distance. Religious leaders called for calm. Some people panicked, but most carried on with a nervous determination. Then the aliens made contact. A single smaller ship detached from the main fleet and descended toward Earth. It broadcast a simple message in perfect English and several other human languages. "We come as representatives of the Zoraxian Dominion. We will meet with your leaders to discuss terms of your integration into our empire." The meeting site was hastily prepared on a remote island in the Pacific. Military forces from a dozen nations secured the area while a temporary structure was built for the historic first contact. Admiral Miller was selected as part of the human delegation, along with representatives from China, Russia, India, and several other nations. The alien ship landed with surprising grace for its size. A door opened in its side and 3 tall figures emerged. They walked on 2 legs but had 4 arms. Their skin was greenish-gray and covered in fine scales. Their heads were elongated with no visible ears and large black eyes. They wore what appeared to be ceremonial armor in red and gold. The center figure stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Kraltek of the Zoraxian Dominion. I bring terms from Grand Marshal Zelthric." A translator device on the ambassador's chest conveyed his words into English. His actual voice was a series of clicks and hisses. The UN Secretary-General stepped forward. "I welcome you to Earth. We are eager to establish peaceful relations." "With your people?" Kraltek made a gesture that might have been amusement. "We do not seek relations. We seek integration." The Dominion requires your world's resources and strategic position. You will submit to our authority. Your people will be allowed to live under our rule if they prove useful. A murmur ran through the human delegation. Admiral Miller studied the aliens carefully. Their posture, their tone, their entire approach radiated absolute confidence. They had done this before. The Chinese representative spoke next. Surely we can negotiate terms that benefit both our peoples. There is no negotiation? Kraltek replied. Only terms of surrender. You will disarm your military forces. You will provide a complete inventory of your resources. You will identify your most intelligent scientists and engineers to assist with the transition. You have 30 Earth days to comply. After that time, we will begin the standard pacification process. Admiral Miller stepped forward. And if we refuse? The alien ambassador turned his large black eyes toward Miller. Then you will witness true warfare. Your species knows only primitive conflict. The Dominion has perfected the art of war over centuries of conquest. Your resistance would be brief and futile. Miller stood straight, his voice calm and measured. Ambassador Kraltek, please convey this message to Grand Marshal Zelthruk. Humanity does not surrender its home. We welcome peaceful exchange, but we will defend our planet. If your people have studied us at all, you know that humans have a long history of resisting invaders against overwhelming odds. Kraltek made another gesture, this one sharp and dismissive. Your bravery is noted but misplaced. Study our ships. Consider our technology. We have crossed the stars while you have barely left your atmosphere. The outcome is inevitable. With that, the ambassador and his companions returned to their ship. The meeting had lasted less than 15 minutes as the alien vessel rose into the sky. Admiral Miller turned to his colleagues. We have 30 days to prepare for the fight of our lives. In orbit, Ambassador Kraltek reported to Grand Marshal Zelthruk. They refuse our terms, as expected. Their military leader spoke of resistance. Zelthruk looked at the tactical display showing Earth's military capabilities. Primitive projectile weapons, basic aircraft, rudimentary space presence, simple atomic weapons. No energy shields, no faster-than-light capability. No gravity manipulation. They are children playing at war. Shall I begin the standard conquest protocol? Asked the ambassador. Yes, Zelthruk replied, but observe them closely these next 30 days. I am curious to see how they prepare for their doom. It is always interesting to note cultural variations in the acceptance of defeat. On Earth, Admiral Miller addressed a joint session of world military leaders. We face an enemy with technology far beyond our own. Conventional tactics will fail. We must be unconventional. We must use every advantage our planet gives us. We must make Earth itself our ally in this fight. The Russian general nodded. We have experience with using harsh terrain against technologically superior forces. The Israeli commander added, and we have experience with asymmetric warfare when outnumbered. Exactly, Miller said. Every nation has something to contribute. Every military tradition offers wisdom. We need to pool our knowledge, set aside our differences, and prepare to show these Araxians that humanity knows more about war than they could possibly imagine. For the next 30 days, Earth prepared. Military forces moved to hidden locations. Civilian populations began evacuations from major cities. Scientists worked to understand the alien technology from long-range observations. Hackers probed for any way to access alien systems. Factories converted to weapons production. Cold bunkers from past wars were reopened and stocked. And in orbit, the Zoraxians watched with growing curiosity as the humans scrambled like ants whose hill had been disturbed. They had seen this pattern before on other worlds. The initial defiance, the frantic preparation, the eventual surrender when the first cities burned, exactly 30 days after the meeting, the Zoraxian fleet moved into attack position. Grand Marshal Zelthruk gave the order, begin the conquest. The first strikes targeted military installations and satellite systems. The Zoraxians expected panic and disarray. What they got instead was an organized, determined response that would change their understanding of warfare forever. The Zoraxian attack began with a wave of energy pulses that disabled most of Earth's satellite network. Communications across the planet faltered but did not fail completely. The humans had prepared backup systems during their 30-day grace period. Underground fiber optic networks remained untouched. Old radio systems were brought back online. Military commands continued to flow through channels the Zoraxians had not anticipated. Grand Marshal Zelthric watched from his command ship as the first wave of shuttlecraft descended toward major military bases. "They are responding with aircraft," reported his tactical officer. "Primitive jet engines with basic missile systems," Zelthric nodded. "As expected. They will learn quickly that their technology is no match for ours." Lieutenant Samantha Green strapped herself into her fighter jet. She was part of a squadron based in a hidden airfield in Nevada. Their base was not on any official maps. During the 30-day preparation period, military forces around the world had created backup positions unknown to the aliens. "Eagle Squadron?" "This is Eagle Leader," she said into her helmet microphone. "Remember the plan? We don't try to match them in direct combat. We use the terrain, we use the weather, we hit and run." 12 jets screamed into the sky, not toward the alien shuttles that were attacking the official airbase 60 miles away, but toward a brewing storm system. The jets flew directly into the thunderstorm, using the electrical interference to mask their approach. Got in the command ship, an alarm sounded. "Marshal, we have lost contact with Attack Group 7, said the tactical officer. They were approaching a human airbase when our sensors detected a group of aircraft emerging from a weather system. Zelthric frowned. Emerging from a weather system? Why would they fly into a storm? On the ground, Marine Captain Jack Porter led his team through dense forest. They wore special suits designed to mask their heat signatures. They moved quietly toward an alien landing zone where shuttles were deploying ground troops. Porter had studied every scrap of information about the alien technology that scientists had been able to gather. "Remember," he whispered to his team, "their sensors are designed for open battlefield conditions. They've never fought in dense vegetation. Stay under the canopy." The Marines reached the edge of the clearing where 3 alien shuttles had landed. Zoraxian soldiers were establishing a perimeter. They moved with mechanical precision, following textbook formations that would have been effective on an open field. Porter gave the signal. His snipers targeted the aliens' communication devices first. Then the main attack began, not as a frontal assault, but as a series of strikes from multiple directions. The Marines fired their weapons and immediately changed positions. They created an illusion of a much larger force through constant movement. The Zoraxian commander tried to organize a response, but his troops were trained for conventional warfare. They formed defensive lines against an enemy that refused to attack in lines. The aliens began to fall one by one. "Attack Group 10 reports they are under assault from forest-concealed enemies," reported the tactical officer to Grand Marshal Zelthric. "They cannot establish proper formation due to dense vegetation." Zelthric studied the reports coming in from around the planet. "These humans are not fighting according to any standard doctrine. Each of our landing parties reports different tactics being used against them. They are primitive," said his second-in-command. "They are simply disorganized." "No," Zelthric replied. "This is deliberate. They are adapting their methods to each environment. They are avoiding our strengths and targeting our weaknesses. This is not primitive. This is sophisticated." By the end of the first day, the Zoraxians had secured their primary targets, but at a much higher cost than anticipated. They had lost 23 shuttlecraft and over 400 ground troops. Human casualties were high as well, but lower than the aliens had expected. Admiral Frank Miller met with his command staff in a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. "The first day could have gone worse," he said. "Their technology is advanced, but their tactics are rigid. They fight by the book." "Our satellite network is mostly down," reported General Martinez. "But we've activated the backup communication." Systems. The internet is still functioning on the ground networks. What about civilian casualties? Asked Miller. Lower than expected, said Colonel Lee. The evacuation plans worked. Most major cities were at 30% capacity when the attacks began. Miller nodded. Good, now we move to Phase 2. Guerrilla operations worldwide, no large formations, no set-piece battles. We make them fight 1,000 small wars instead of one big one. In space, 5 small human spacecraft launched from a hidden facility in the Andes Mountains. They had been constructed in secret during the 30-day window, using designs that incorporated everything scientists had been able to learn about. Zoraxian Technology. Commander Olivia Reed piloted the lead ship. Wolfpack, this is Alpha. Our target is their supply ship in Sector 4. Remember, we can't match their firepower. We use stealth and surprise. The human ships were small and agile. They used the debris field of destroyed satellites for cover. They approached the Zoraxian supply vessel from 5 different vectors. The alien ship detected them only when they were already launching their attacks. Marshal, our supply ship in Sector 4 is under attack, reported the tactical officer with obvious surprise. The humans have spacecraft we did not know about. Zelthruk watched the tactical display with growing concern. The human ships were primitive compared to Zoraxian vessels, but they were attacking with a coordination and daring that he had not seen in centuries of warfare. 1 human ship was destroyed. Then a second. But the remaining 3 completed their attack runs. The Zoraxian supply ship suffered critical damage. They sacrificed 2 ships to ensure the success of their mission, Zelthruk said quietly. Most species we have encountered value preservation of forces above mission success. They are savages, said his second-in-command. No, Zelthruk replied. They are something else. Something we have not encountered before. The first week of the war continued with the same pattern. The Zoraxians would advance, using their superior technology to secure objectives. But they paid a price for every victory. Human forces would retreat, regroup, and attack again from unexpected directions. In the Indian Ocean, submarines that the aliens did not know existed attacked Zoraxian vessels from below the waves. In the mountains of Afghanistan, fighters who had spent decades perfecting the art of ambush taught alien troops painful lessons. In the Amazon rainforest, indigenous guides led special forces through paths no scanner could detect. Grand Marshal Zelthruk called his war council together. We need to reassess our approach, he said. These humans do not fight like any species we have encountered. They do not value order or formation. They embrace chaos. They do not seek to preserve their forces. They willingly sacrifice themselves for tactical advantages. But they cannot win, said Ambassador Karltek. Our technology is too advanced, our numbers too great. Victory is not always about technology or numbers, Zelthruk replied. In 300 years of conquest, I have never seen a species fight like this. They have turned their entire planet into a weapon against us. Every environment, every terrain type presents different challenges. What do you suggest, Marshal? Asked the ambassador. We need to study them more carefully. We need to understand how they think. This is not merely a military problem. It is a psychological one. On Earth, Admiral Miller received reports from around the world. The news was mixed. Major cities were under alien control. Conventional military bases had been destroyed or captured, but resistance was growing stronger, not weaker, as the Zoraxians had expected. They thought we would break, Miller told his staff. They thought we would surrender once they showed their power. They don't understand humanity. What's our next move, Admiral? Asked General Martinez. We continue as planned, Miller replied. We fight them everywhere, every day, in every possible way. We make them spread their forces thin. We make them question their tactics. And we buy time for our scientists to study their technology. In a laboratory hidden deep in the Ural Mountains, Dr. William Harris led a team examining a captured Zoraxian shuttle. Their systems are advanced but logical, he told the engineers gathered around him. There's nothing magical about their technology. We can understand it. We can reverse engineer it, and eventually we can turn it against them. As the first month of war came to an end, the Zoraxians controlled much of Earth's surface, but their control was tenuous. They faced constant attacks from forces they could not easily track. Their supply lines were under continuous threat. Their casualties mounted daily. Grand Marshal Zelthric stood alone in his command center, studying reports from across the planet. For the first time in his long career of conquest, he felt something unfamiliar: doubt. These humans fought with a ferocity and creativity he had never witnessed. They seemed to grow stronger from defeat rather than weaker. They learned and adapted with astonishing speed. "Perhaps," he said softly to himself, "we do not know war as well as we thought." 3 months into the war, the Zoraxians had established control centers in most major cities around the world. Their warships remained in orbit, sending down supplies and reinforcements as needed. But despite their advanced technology, they found themselves in an increasingly difficult position. Holding territory proved far harder than taking it. Human resistance fighters appeared and disappeared like ghosts, striking at alien patrols and then melting back into the population or the wilderness. Grand Marshal Zelthric summoned Dr. Vexlack, the fleet's chief xenobiologist, to his command center. The doctor was an expert on alien species and had studied humans intensively since the invasion began. "Doctor, I need to understand these humans better," Zelthric said. "Why do they continue to fight when defeat is inevitable? Why do they not surrender to save themselves?" Dr. Vexlack displayed images of human battles throughout their history. "Marshal, human warfare is unlike anything in our experience. They have fought thousands of wars among themselves. Their entire history is filled with conflict. But what makes them unique is not the quantity of their wars, but their adaptability. Humans constantly change how they fight. They learn from each defeat. They innovate continuously." "But their technology is primitive," Zelthric argued. "Technology is only one aspect of warfare," the doctor replied. "Humans compensate with creativity and willingness to sacrifice. They have a concept they call victory at any cost that many of their warriors embrace. They will accept death if it advances their cause. Our psychological models cannot fully account for this behavior." In a hidden facility beneath Chicago, Dr. LeVar Bennett worked with Major Alan Rhodes to develop a deeper understanding of Zoraxian psychology and tactics. Dr. Bennett had been a leading psychologist before the invasion. Major Rhodes was a military intelligence officer. Together, they studied every piece of information available about the aliens. "They're incredibly disciplined," Dr. Bennett said as she reviewed footage of Zoraxian troops. "Every movement is precise. Every formation is textbook perfect." "But that's also their weakness." "They lack improvisation," Major Rhodes agreed. "They follow patterns, and patterns can be predicted." Dr. Bennett pointed to a map showing Zoraxian patrol routes. "They value efficiency above all else. Their patrols follow the mathematically optimal paths through each sector. They never vary their timing unless directly attacked." Major Rhodes smiled. "Then we can use that against them. If we know where they'll be and when they'll be there, we can set traps. But we need to think bigger," Dr. Bennett said. "We need to use our understanding of their psychology to create a strategy they won't expect." The plan they developed was called Operation Thermopylae, named after an ancient battle where a small force had held off a much larger army by using terrain to their advantage. The operation would take place in the Rocky Mountains, where human forces would appear to make a desperate last stand. Admiral Miller reviewed the plan with his staff. "This is risky," he said. "We'll be sacrificing a lot of good people. But if it works," Major Rhodes said, "we'll destroy an entire Zoraxian battle group. And more importantly, we'll shake their confidence." Miller nodded. "Proceed." "But make sure every volunteer knows exactly what they're signing up for." The operation began with a series of attacks on Zoraxian supply lines leading to their Denver control center. As expected, the aliens responded by sending a large force to eliminate the human resistance. Human forces retreated into a narrow mountain pass, appearing to seek shelter in a defensible position. The Zoraxian commander followed standard doctrine for such situations. He deployed his forces in a classic pincer movement to surround the pass. His heavy weapons were positioned to bombard. The human position. Everything was by the book. What the Zoraxians didn't know was that the mountains around them had been prepared over the previous weeks. Explosive charges had been planted throughout the area. Tunnels had been dug to allow human forces to move unseen. And most importantly, the humans had positioned their newest weapons where they would be most effective when the trap was sprung. The mountains themselves seemed to come alive. Avalanches buried Zoraxian positions. Hidden artillery opened fire from a dozen locations simultaneously. Human fighters attacked from tunnels that the alien scanners hadn't detected. The carefully orchestrated Zoraxian assault turned into chaos. The Zoraxian commander tried to reorganize his forces according to standard protocols, but the humans had studied those protocols. They knew exactly how the aliens would respond, and they had countermeasures ready for each expected move. By the time the battle ended, over 2,000 Zoraxian troops had been lost, along with hundreds of humans, but the strategic victory belonged entirely to humanity. An entire Zoraxian battle group had been effectively destroyed. Grand Marshal Zelthric personally reviewed the battle recordings. They sacrificed hundreds of their own to kill thousands of ours, he said quietly. They knew exactly how we would respond at each stage. They used our own doctrine against us. This changes our strategic position significantly, his second-in-command noted. We must adjust our approach. No, Zelthric replied. We must completely rethink our approach. These humans do not fight like any species we have encountered in 3 centuries of conquest. We have been fighting according to principles that they do not share. Meanwhile, humanity continued to advance in other ways. In laboratories around the world, scientists worked to understand and reverse engineer Zoraxian technology. Dr. William Harris led a team examining a captured alien energy shield generator. Their tech is advanced but not incomprehensible, he explained to Admiral Miller during a secure video conference. They followed a very linear development path. Everything builds logically on established principles. That's their weakness. How? Is that a weakness? Miller asked. Because humans don't think linearly, Harris replied. We make intuitive leaps. We connect seemingly unrelated concepts. The Zoraxians have advanced step by step over centuries, but we can skip steps. We can take their technology and reimagine it in ways they never considered. The first breakthrough came when Dr. Harris's team discovered a way to disrupt Zoraxian energy shields using a frequency modulation that the aliens had never tested, because it made no logical sense in their engineering framework. Human forces began deploying the new technology immediately, allowing them to penetrate defenses that had previously been impervious. The psychological impact on the Zoraxians was profound. They had believed their shields to be unbreakable by human weapons. The sudden vulnerability shook their confidence in their technological superiority. In orbit, Commander Olivia Reed led another mission with Earth's growing fleet of spacecraft. The humans had learned from each previous engagement, adapting their tactics while the Zoraxians continued to follow their established doctrine. They're still fighting the way they were taught, Commander Reed told her pilots. But we're fighting the way we just invented yesterday. That's our advantage. The human ships approached a Zoraxian orbital platform using a complex, seemingly random pattern that confused the alien targeting systems. The Zoraxians had designed their defenses to counter logical, efficient attack routes. The humans deliberately chose inefficient, unpredictable approaches. When the Zoraxians adjusted their defense grid to the new threat, the humans immediately changed tactics again. Some ships accelerated to dangerous speeds, pushing their engines beyond safety limits. Others cut power entirely, drifting on ballistic trajectories that the aliens didn't expect. The result was another human victory, though at a cost of several ships and brave pilots. Grand Marshal Zelthric found himself in an unfamiliar position. For the first time in his distinguished career, he requested reinforcements from the Dominion homeworld. The message he sent was carefully worded, explaining that the humans represented a unique challenge requiring additional resources. What he did not say, what he could barely admit to himself, was that he was beginning to doubt the outcome of this war. The humans should have been broken by now. They should have surrendered after seeing the futility of resistance. Instead, they grew stronger with each passing week. They learned. They adapted. They evolved their tactics faster than the Zoraxians could counter them. In his private quarters, Zelthric reviewed Earth's history, focusing on their many wars. He saw a pattern that disturbed him deeply. Humans had an almost infinite capacity for adaptation in warfare. They had fought in every environment their planet offered. They had developed weapons and tactics for every situation. And most troublingly, they often seemed to achieve their greatest innovations when pushed to the brink of defeat. They thrive in adversity, he murmured to himself. We designed our entire military doctrine around breaking an enemy's will to fight. But these humans, hardship only strengthens their resolve. For the first time in 300 years of Zoraxian conquest, Grand Marshal Zelthric faced an enemy that made him question not just his tactics, but the fundamental principles of warfare that his civilization had built over centuries. 8 months into the war, humanity launched its first coordinated global offensive. Until now, human forces had focused on defense and guerrilla tactics. They had avoided direct confrontation with the technologically superior Zoraxians. But, in secret facilities around the world, humans had been preparing for something bigger. They had been studying captured Zoraxian technology, reverse engineering it, and combining it with human innovations. Admiral Frank Miller addressed the combined military leadership via secure communication network. His face looked tired but determined on the screens. Today we show the Zoraxians that humanity is not just fighting for survival, we are fighting to win. Operation Rising Phoenix begins at dawn. Across the planet, resistance cells receive their orders. In Zoraxian-controlled cities, sleeper agents activated. In hidden bases, pilots prepared their aircraft and spacecraft. In underground factories, the newest weapons were loaded onto transport vehicles. The largest coordinated military action in human history was about to begin. Commander Olivia Reed stood on the bridge of the Defiance, the first true warship humanity had built using reverse-engineered Zoraxian technology. The ship had been constructed in a hidden underwater facility in the Marianas Trench, safe from alien detection. 5. Similar vessels had been built in other locations around the world. All hands prepare for surface launch, Reed ordered. Engineering status report. Shield generators online, came the reply. Weapon systems ready, propulsion at full capacity. Reed nodded. This is what we trained for. The Zoraxians control the air and much of the land, but they've largely ignored our oceans. The changes today. The Defiance rose from the depths like a massive sea creature. Water cascaded from its hull as it broke the surface. Its engines roared to life, and it shot forward at a speed no human vessel had achieved before the war. The other 5 ships emerged from their hiding places at the same moment. From the South China Sea, from the Atlantic off the coast of Brazil, from the Indian Ocean, from the Mediterranean, from the Gulf of Mexico. 6 vessels moving at incredible speed toward their targets, the Zoraxian command ships hovering over major cities. In orbit. Colonel Peter Martinez led Earth's small fleet of spacecraft. Most have been built since the war began, using a combination of human ingenuity and adapted alien technology. They weren't as advanced as Zoraxian ships, but they had been designed with one specific mission in mind. Phoenix Squadron, this is? Phoenix Leader, Martinez said into his comm system. Launch in 3 minutes. Remember your training. We don't need to win in space. We just need to create enough chaos to split their attention. The human spacecraft launched from hidden facilities around the planet. They rose into orbit on trajectories calculated to avoid Zoraxian detection systems for as long as possible. They carried weapons specifically designed to target alien communication arrays. On the Zoraxian command ship, Grand Marshal Zelthric received the first alerts with disbelief. Multiple human warships detected on the surface? Spacecraft approaching orbital positions? This is happening simultaneously? Yes, Marshal, his tactical officer confirmed. And we're receiving reports of coordinated ground attacks on all our major control centers. Human aircraft are appearing in unprecedented numbers. This appears to be a full planetary offensive. Zelthric studied the tactical displays. The humans had timed their attack perfectly. They struck just as the Zoraxian fleet was rotating patrol duties, creating temporary gaps in their defense network. How did they know our patrol schedule? He demanded. Those are encrypted communications, unknown, Marshal. But they seem to have extremely accurate intelligence about our operations. What the Zoraxians didn't know was that Dr. William Harris and his team had cracked their communication codes 2 months earlier. Humans had been listening to every transmission, learning patrol patterns, supply schedules, and command structures on the ground. Major Alan Rhodes led a force against the Zoraxian control center in Cairo. His soldiers carried new weapons that combined human firearms with alien energy technology. Remember, they'll respond according to their standard doctrine. They'll form defensive positions at these points. He indicated locations on a map. That's where our heavy weapons will target. The battle for Cairo began with a series of explosions that disabled the Zoraxian perimeter sensors. Rhodes' forces attacked from multiple directions simultaneously, using the confusion to penetrate deep into the alien defenses before they could organize an effective response. The Zoraxian commander followed his training, deploying troops in textbook formations. But the humans had studied that textbook. They knew exactly where the aliens would position their forces, and they had the firepower to target those specific locations. Similar scenes played out in cities across the planet. Human forces struck with precision and coordination that shocked the Zoraxians. For the first time since the invasion began, the aliens found themselves on the defensive everywhere at one spot in the Pacific Ocean. Commander Reed's ship, Defiance, approached the Zoraxian command vessel hovering over Sydney. Weapons range in 30 seconds, her tactical officer reported. They're powering up their defenses, said the sensor operator. They've detected us, Reed nodded, as expected. Deploy countermeasures. The Defiance released dozens of small drones that created a cloud of conflicting sensor readings around the ship. The Zoraxians had never encountered this tactic before. Their targeting system struggled to lock onto the actual vessel amid the false signals. The human ship fired its main weapons, not at the alien vessel itself, but at its communication array. The precisely targeted strike disabled the Zoraxian ship's ability to coordinate with the rest of their fleet. In space, Colonel Martinez's forces executed similar targeted attacks. They didn't try to destroy the superior alien vessels. Instead, they focused on disrupting their communications and sensor systems, effectively blinding and isolating each ship. They're adapting, Martinez warned his pilots. Change to pattern Bravo. The human ships immediately altered their attack patterns. They had prepared multiple strategies and could switch between them rapidly. The Zoraxians, following their standard protocols, were slower to adjust on his command ship. Grand Marshal Zelthric watched with growing alarm as reports flooded in from around the planet. How are they coordinating these attacks with their primitive communication technology? Most of their satellites are destroyed. What Zelthric didn't know was that humans had laid thousands of miles of new underwater fiber optic cables in the months since the invasion. They had built a redundant global communication network that the Zoraxians couldn't detect or disrupt. Marshal, we've lost communication with 6 orbital platforms and 3 surface command ships, reported his second-in-command. Our ground forces are reporting coordinated attacks in every major control center. They're using weapons that can penetrate our shields. Zelthric studied the tactical displays, seeing the impossible becoming reality before his eyes. They've been planning this for months, he realized. While we thought we were winning, they were preparing. This isn't a desperate last stand. This is a carefully orchestrated counterattack. For the next 48 hours, battles raged across the planet and in orbit. The humans couldn't match Zoraxian technology directly, but they had learned to exploit its weaknesses. They had studied alien tactics and developed counters for each one. They had turned their diversity and adaptability into weapons more powerful than any energy cannon. By the time the dust settled, humanity had retaken 12 major cities. They had destroyed or disabled 7 Zoraxian warships. They had captured vital alien technology and data stores. Most importantly, they had shattered the myth of Zoraxian invincibility. In his command center, Grand Marshal Zelthrek faced a situation he had never encountered in 3 centuries of warfare. "We control 60% of the planet's surface," he told his war council. 6 months ago, that figure was 80%. We are losing ground, we are losing ships, we are losing this war. "The reinforcements from the homeworld will arrive in 3 months, his second-in-command reminded him. "We can still prevail," Zelthrek shook his head. "Even with reinforcements, we face a species unlike any we have encountered. They do not break, they adapt. They learn our weaknesses faster than we can learn theirs. They turn our own strengths against us." He brought up images from various battles around the planet. "Look at how they fight. No 2 human forces use the same tactics. They have no standard doctrine. Every commander adapts to local conditions. Every unit innovates independently. We cannot predict them because they do not predict themselves." For the first time in the history of the Zoraxian Dominion, a conquered world was slipping from their grasp. And for the first time in his life, Grand Marshal Zelthrek wondered if his civilization's understanding of warfare had been fundamentally incomplete all along. 2 years after the Zoraxians first appeared in Earth's orbit, representatives from both species met on a space station orbiting Mars. The war had reached a stalemate. Humanity had retaken most of their major cities and established defensive perimeters that the aliens struggled to penetrate. The Zoraxians still held significant territory and maintained orbital superiority, but they could not press forward without committing resources that would leave their other conquered worlds vulnerable. The space station had been constructed specifically for these negotiations, a neutral ground where both sides could meet as equals. Admiral Frank Miller led the human delegation. His hair had turned completely white during the war, and new scars marked his face from a Zoraxian attack that had nearly killed him 6 months earlier. But his eyes remained sharp and determined as he entered the conference room. Grand Marshal Zelthrek led the Zoraxian delegation. He had been recalled to the homeworld briefly, but had insisted on returning to personally handle the negotiations. His experiences on Earth had changed him profoundly. He had gone from confident conqueror to thoughtful strategist, forced to reconsider principles of warfare that his civilization had held for centuries. The 2 leaders faced each other across the table. It was not their first meeting. They had communicated several times in recent months as the possibility of negotiations emerged. A cautious respect had developed between them. "Admiral Miller," Zelthrek said with a slight bow of his head, "my delegation is prepared to discuss terms for a permanent cessation of hostilities." Miller nodded. "We are prepared to do the same." Marshal Zelthrek, "Let me be clear from the start. Earth will not surrender its sovereignty. Any agreement must recognize humanity's right to self-determination." "That is understood," Zelthrek replied. "The nature of this conflict has led the Dominion Council to reconsider certain aspects of our expansion policy." The negotiations proceeded for several days. Both sides had prepared extensively, analyzing potential points of compromise in areas where they would not yield. The discussions were intense but remained respectful. Neither humans nor Zoraxians wanted to continue a war that had cost so many lives on both sides. Dr. Lavara Bennett served as a key advisor to the human delegation. Her understanding of Zoraxian psychology had proven invaluable throughout the war. Now she watched the alien negotiators carefully, noting subtle shifts in their postures and speech patterns. "They're sincere," she told Admiral Miller during a private consultation. "This isn't a delaying tactic. They genuinely want to end this conflict. And more than that, they seem to have developed a respect for humanity that wasn't there before." Miller nodded. "I've noticed the same thing." Zelfric speaks differently now than he did when we first met. There's less arrogance, more consideration. The war changed them, Bennett said, just as it changed us. They came expecting an easy conquest of primitives. They found something they'd never encountered before. The treaty that eventually emerged recognized Earth's sovereignty and established boundaries within the solar system. The Zoraxians would maintain a presence on Mars and in the asteroid belt, but Earth and its immediate orbital space would remain under human control. More significantly, the treaty included provisions for cultural and technological exchange between the species on the final day of negotiations. After the formal treaty had been signed, Zelthric requested a private conversation with Admiral Miller. The two leaders met in a small observation room with a view of the red planet below and Earth visible as a bright blue dot in the distance. "Admiral," Zelthric said, "I wish to express something that is not part of the official record." The Zoraxian Dominion has conquered 17 star systems over 3 centuries. We have encountered dozens of intelligent species. None have fought as your people fought. Miller watched the alien carefully. "We were defending our home." "It was more than that," Zelthric replied. "My people have studied warfare for millennia. We believed we had perfected it, reduced it to a science with predictable outcomes. Humanity showed us how incomplete our understanding was." "War isn't just about technology or numbers or even strategy," Miller said. "It's about the spirit that drives a people to defend what they value. It's about innovation and adaptation. It's about finding strength in diversity rather than uniformity." Zelthric made a gesture that Miller had learned to recognize as agreement. "This is the lesson we have taken from Earth. It has already begun to change how the Dominion approaches both warfare and diplomacy. Your species has altered the course of our civilization." In the years that followed, the relationship between humans and Zoraxians evolved from cautious cooperation to genuine partnership. Earth recovered from the war with remarkable speed, rebuilding cities and restoring ecosystems. The technological exchange with the Zoraxians accelerated human development, particularly in space travel and energy production. More importantly, humanity's approach to conflict and problem-solving began to influence Zoraxian culture. The aliens had always valued order, efficiency, and adherence to established principles. They now began to recognize the power of creative thinking, adaptability, and diverse perspectives. 5 years after the treaty signing, Earth opened the Interstellar Defense Academy. Military officers from both species trained together, teaching each other their approaches to strategy and tactics. Zoraxians learned human adaptability and creative problem-solving. Humans learned Zoraxian discipline and technological expertise. Admiral Miller, now retired from active service, served as the Academy's first director. During his opening address, he looked out at the audience of human and Zoraxian cadets sitting side by side. "When the Zoraxian ships first appeared in our skies, few could have imagined this moment," he said. "We were enemies fighting for survival. Now we are partners building a shared future." The war taught both our species valuable lessons about ourselves and each other. The most important lesson was that true strength comes not from conquering others, but from learning from them. Grand Marshal Zelthric, also retired and serving as a special advisor to the Academy, added his own thoughts. "The Dominion believed. We knew war. We had studied it, codified it, and practiced it across many star systems. But war is not merely about weapons or tactics. It is about the spirit that drives the species to defend what they value, to innovate when faced with impossible odds, and to find strength in their diversity rather than their uniformity. Humanity taught us this." The Zoraxian Dominion itself began to change. The experience with Earth led to reforms in how the Dominion approached other worlds. Conquest was gradually replaced by diplomacy and cultural exchange. The fighting spirit that the Dominion had encountered on Earth earned humanity a special place in Zoraxian society. Human adaptability, creativity, and determination became qualities that Zoraxians sought to understand and incorporate into their own culture. 20 years after the war ended, humanity launched its first independently developed faster-than-light Vessel. The ship carried a mixed crew of humans and Zoraxians on a mission of exploration rather than conquest. Among the crew was Diane Powell, the astronomer who had first detected the Zoraxian fleet all those years ago. As the ship prepared to make its first jump beyond the solar system, Captain Powell addressed her crew. We once looked to the stars in fear when the Zoraxians came. Now we look to them with hope and curiosity. We travel not as conquerors but as explorers. We carry with us the most important lesson from the war, that different species can learn from each other, grow together, and build something greater than either could achieve alone. In the decades that followed, humanity spread throughout the galaxy, not through force of arms but through the strength of their ideas and their unique approach to challenges. The Earth-Zoraxian alliance became the foundation for a new interstellar community based on mutual respect and cooperation. The war that had begun with an attempted conquest became instead the beginning of a transformation that spread across the stars. The Zoraxians had arrived believing they knew war. They departed having learned that humanity's greatest strength was not in how they fought, but in how they turned enemies into allies and challenges into opportunities for growth. This legacy of humanity's first contact with alien life would shape the destiny of both species for centuries to come.